on your phone. And also, if you do have some interest in the technical side of things, there'll be more opportunities to help F-Droid in that way as well. At 11 a.m., there is a discussion session on free software messaging, where some people will be getting together. I know Karen Sandler, Ted Nicholson, and Libby Wrench, our campaigns manager, will be leading a group there to discuss ways to explain the importance of free software to new audiences and how to improve the way that we talk about it. That begins at 11 a.m. and the rooms for both of those things, just stop by the info desk and they'll have the list there tomorrow morning. We have some nice tasty treats for after the presentation. The treats feature lovely 3D printed gnu's, which were done by our friends at Alien Objects, sponsor of that. So they're in Colorado, and these are 3D printed items printed on a free software printer, and also from a free design. So very, very nice thing to have to celebrate the anniversary. One thing, do not eat them. On Star Trek they make food, but as of yet, we don't do that enough. So keep that in mind. And now we're not responsible with you. So I believe, oh, and I should say the cupcakes are vegan, so vegans can eat them as well. They're also good, so please don't run away from them just because of them. Any other that's important. The shop featuring the gnu and FSF merchandise and books will be open for a little while after this event. If you want to head after the presentation, if you want to head over there, but it will not be open tomorrow. So don't count on buying things tomorrow, but do stop by tonight if you just didn't want to carry something around all day. Now's the time to stop by and pick it up.
And I'll go there so I can sign things.
And with that, we introduced the man who sent the certain message to Usenet 30 years and a day ago. Talk to us about the beginning project. Richard Stallman.
So, first, my usual two requests. If you take photos of me, please do not put them in Facebook or Instagram. Those are monstrous surveillance engines. If you put the photo of someone in those sites, you help them do surveillance on that person, which is a bad way to treat someone. Please don't treat me that way. Second, if you make a recording and you want to distribute copies, please do so only in the ways that are favorable to free software. First of all, that means in a format that is well chosen, which means either the OGG formats or WebM, not in MP anything, because those are patented, and not in Flash, because we don't have free support for the latest version of Flash, and not in Windows Media Player or QuickTime. So this means don't put it in YouTube, because YouTube would distribute it using Flash wrapped around MPEG-4. And second, make sure that the file can be downloaded without running any non-free JavaScript code, and that also lets out YouTube. So 2 reasons not to put it in YouTube. I hope they'll fix those things. And please put on the recording the Creative Commons No Derivatives license, because this is a presentation of a point of view. So, it's been 30 years of the free software movement. Where do we stand? Well, at the beginning, there were a few free programs, but you couldn't do your computing with them. You couldn't buy a computer and run it in freedom and do anything at all. We've come a long way. Now that we have the gnu+linux system and some other more or less free operating systems, you can buy a computer and run it with nearly entirely free software. And you can do a lot of things with that. So, what do we need to do? Well, as you can see, most people are using proprietary systems. So, we have a lot more people to liberate. There are some jobs that can't be done with free software. No one's made free software to do them, or worse, they're patented, or they're secret, and we don't even know what the job is. There are a lot of peripherals that we can't run with free software because the manufacturers won't tell us how to run them. Now, this is shocking. It should be shocking that someone would offer to sell people a device and refuse to tell them how to use it. Maybe it should be illegal. In any case, it's quite common. And when we can't convince those manufacturers to change what they're doing, the only way we can fix it is with reverse engineering. So, for most of the year, every time I give a speech in a university, I say, please teach a class in reverse engineering. A class perhaps with projects for groups of 4 or 5 students to reverse engineer some peripheral for a year. And I think this way they could make progress, and they also train people in a very useful skill that not very many people have, and that's in high demand. So that is one of the big obstacles to our success. That's why it's easy to get a computer you can run with mostly free software, but getting one that you can run entirely with free software is difficult. In fact, I don't know of any computer being made now that you can do that on. And that's really bad. You know, we had to stock up on these for spare parts because we don't know when there'll be anything else made that is acceptable. Well, I may have found a way to get computers manufactured that we could use. It's not certain. I shouldn't say anything more about it until somebody's really ready to go. But, and then interestingly, if that plan goes ahead, it won't be a computer that the FSF can certify as respects your freedom, because there'll be one piece of hardware in the system on a chip that we can't run. So yeah, you'll be able to use the machine, you just won't be able to get that piece of hardware, which is the video decoder. So we need people to work on reverse engineering the video decoder in this, I think it's IMX6 system on a chip. Is that, maybe someone remembers if that's the correct name. So it has a graphics processor which people are reverse engineering. But it also has the video decoder, and as far as I know, there's no project working on that. We need one. But there are other things that are attacking users' freedom in their computers. Nowadays, lots of people are using platforms that don't allow any free software. They literally forbid the installation of free software. For instance, the iThings, those disgusting monsters that are the evil legacy of Steve Jobs. They are platforms for censorship. They do not allow users to freely install whatever programs they wish. They will only allow the user to install the programs that are approved by Apple. Now, this definitely should be illegal. We should ban the sale of general-purpose computers, which are platforms for one company to censor the user, or for a group of companies to censor the user. This should not be allowed. And I would encourage people to campaign for their states to ban this practice. We should require Apple to let people install whatever applications they wish, so they can install free software on these machines. But as things stand, the only way that can be done is by jailbreaking. And I've seen bad news that fewer of the users of the iThings are jailbreaking. Partly perhaps because Apple was working hard to make it impossible. So Apple is a monstrous enemy of our freedom. I would like to see people protesting outside Apple stores, especially when fools are waiting online to buy the latest Apple prison. We should have people going there giving them handouts saying why the thing they hope to buy is unethical, and call the news media too. But you'll notice that many developers of free software are desperate to have it used by people using iThings. Now this is an aspect of a mistaken idea that many developers have. They think that they need to have lots of people use the program. They think it's somehow doing them good if lots of people are running that program. But that's backwards. If people are running their code, they are doing those other people good. Those users are not doing them good. So it's a mistake to think that you should decide you should make your decisions so that lots of people will use your code. Of course, you should make the code better, and maybe more people will use it if you do a better job. But that doesn't mean that anything that makes more people use it is a good thing. And the mistake of believing that leads to bad decisions, because there are a lot of companies that will come to the developers and say, if you use a weaker license, we will use your code, and isn't that great that we will be benefiting from you? Don't you feel great? Of course, we'll do that by making it into a proprietary program. A proprietary program doesn't make the world a better place. It's harm. So if someone says, adopt a lax license, and then we will distribute proprietary programs with your code, and that means more people will use your code, you should say, I don't want people to use my code if they don't get freedom. What good is that? That's making things worse, not better. I want my software to give people freedom, and anything that causes it not to give people freedom will be perverting it into an instrument of subjection. So, no, I won't switch to a lax license to get you to make proprietary versions of my code. I'll defend users' freedom because I'd rather do a good thing to this many people than a bad thing to that many people. Now, this has been going on since the 1980s. But now we see it especially strongly because there are people who think that they just have to have users on the iThings. And rather than ask to tell users, jailbreak your machine so you can install my code, they think that they've got to get their programs into the crap store. And that requires making their programs proprietary. So don't fall into that mistake. It's better to have people not using your code than using it as proprietary software. Now, free software, if all the software in your machine is free, then all of it is under the control of the users, and thus we have a defense against attempts to use that software to hurt us. With proprietary software, the users are defenseless against the owner, and the owners of proprietary software commonly put in malicious functionalities. This is not a rare case anymore. If you look at gnu.org/philosophy/proprietary.html, you'll see a list of many specific, established, demonstrated cases of proprietary malware. But even if all the software in the machine is free, and the users have made sure it's not malware, the hardware might be malicious. Today I saw an article saying that the latest Intel chips have a 3G modem connection built into them as a backdoor. Now, I'm not absolutely sure this is true. I haven't seen it checked. I hope that it will be checked soon, and then we'll make a posting about it when we know. But of course, this is always possible. You know, a chip manufacturer could put a backdoor into a chip. So what can we do about it? Well, at present, there's not much we can easily do about it except choose a different chip and hope that there's a choice available to make. We already know that recent generations of Intel CPUs are unacceptable. Whether or not they have a wireless modem in them, we know that they have software that can be backdoored if somebody can contact the machine. So, and this is inside a special processor running inside one of the, which chip is it? Is it the Northbridge? Yeah, so the Northbridge chip contains another computer that can be used to invade the machine. Or can have malware stuck into it. So there's no way you can ever trust those chips. So, at present, all we can do is hope to find a chip that we're pretty confident doesn't do that. Someday, we'll need to make our own chips from designs that are free. At present, this is not a real solution because we can't make our own chips. We're dependent on mass production of chips. Someday, I suppose there will be fabricators we can use to convert a chip design into hardware. And thus, development of free chip designs is a good thing to do. So it's important to encourage the beginnings of the free Libra hardware movement so that we'll be ready, we'll have the designs to use when it becomes possible for us to use them, although today it isn't possible. Today, perhaps the best thing to do is get a computer with chips made by companies in a country that isn't in a position to do you personally much harm. So if you don't live in China, you probably don't care too much if the government of China has a backdoor into your machine. Whereas you might care a lot whether the US government has a backdoor into your machine. Especially, well, if you're a freedom activist in China, it's the opposite way around. Because the Chinese government is the one that would look for ways to hurt you, and the US government probably wouldn't hurt you, even if it can. So it depends where you are. It depends what you're doing, which risk you might choose. This is clearly a bad situation. It's not good that our hardware has become so complicated and full of processors at different levels that may be running non-free microcode that we can't trust. But that is something that we can only address in the long term. Meanwhile, being free inside your own computer is not enough anymore. Because a lot of what we do is communicating with other computers. We need freedom beyond our own head extensions, you might say. But that's very hard to do because communicating between my computer and yours involves lots of machines that belong to other companies, and who knows what they'll do. And many of them may be in the United States, and then we know what they'll do. They'll spy on us. thank you, Snowden, for proving how bad things are. But what can we do about it? Well, to some extent, we can develop software to protect our privacy and our anonymity in communicating on the network. It's not easy, and it may not be able to fully do the job, but it can do part of the job. So we've chosen a further direction for the GNU project, which is to develop software that enables people to use their computers to communicate and collaborate in privacy, minimizing the harm that could be done to them by abuses on anyone else's computers, such as the various gateways of networks that you have to go through, and that talk to transatlantic cables and so on. Now, I say minimizing here because I think it's probably impossible to completely prevent such harm. But it may be possible to set limits on how much the harm can be. So the idea is to aim to minimize what harm can be done to us through the abuses of snooping in our ISPs and in any servers that we talk to. We must recognize that a government we can't control is more dangerous than anything else in the world. Governments we can't control can destroy civilization. All they have to do is keep on pumping out and burning fossil fuels the way they currently plan to do and insist on doing it. And the reason they currently plan to do this and insist on doing this is that we don't have control over them. In that particular domain, it's the fossil fuel companies that control government policies. And those companies are each thinking, we want to sell as much fossil fuel as possible before the collapse happens. If the collapse is going to happen, let's make it faster by getting a jump on the other competing fossil fuel companies. So, we must maintain control of our governments, but it's hard to do that if they spy on dissidents and sabotage dissidents in cooperation with the businesses that are doing harm. And we know that the U.S. government and governments in the U.S. at various levels do this. So, protecting our privacy from government snooping is desperately necessary. It's necessary for the sake of dissidents. It's necessary for the sake of whistleblowers who will tell us what's going on as governments try to ban telling us what's going on. In many states, if you get a job working in an agribusiness so that you can take photos of, for instance, inhumane treatment of animals and then send this to a newspaper, you'll get arrested. So if you're going to do that, you need to maintain your anonymity. So this goal is necessary. I'm happy to say that there are some GNU packages already working towards this goal. The ones I remember are GNU-net and also GNU Consensus, which is aiming to unify various distributed social network systems. And I think there may be more that escape my memory. Of course, there are also software projects outside the GNU project that aim to things like this, such as Tor. need to cooperate with them as much as possible. Now, I'd just like to mention a couple of unfortunate things. People who are well-meaning in the free software movement often end up promoting some non-free software because they didn't know, or they didn't put two and two together at the time it was necessary. Until this morning, on the GNU30, or one of the GNU30 pages, we had links to Google Maps. Google Maps won't function without running a non-free JavaScript program. So we should never recommend the use of Google Maps, and yet we had 3 links to it. Well, they're gone now, because I noticed. Well, this is just something we have to remember. Never recommend the use of Google Maps. But there's an interesting point to be made about navigation systems. Another navigation system might work without requiring the user to run any non-free software, which means it fixes one problem. But there's another problem it might have, and that is sending the addresses that the user is interested in to some server. And once that data is on the server, under the USAP Act, Riot Act, the FBI can collect all that data without even going to court. So the point is that data shouldn't go to the server. A free program running in the user's machine should download whichever map data is relevant that isn't cached already, and then it should figure out the route. And that way, only the user's own machine ever knows what addresses that user is interested in. We need to design systems to resist surveillance and to reduce surveillance by reducing and preferably avoiding data that gets sent to a server. If the server doesn't get any information about what you're doing, and your software is all free and users are making sure it isn't surveilling you, then you have some privacy, finally. We're being surveilled more than people who live behind the Iron Curtain were surveilled. We must reduce the level of surveillance so that it's once again much less than took place behind the Iron Curtain if we want a free country. Another sad thing that people don't notice is they get enthusiastic about some hardware product and they don't realize that it's running non-free software, such as the Raspberry Pi, which won't even start without a non-free program. We have it listed in our list of single-board computers, which you can find in fsf.org/resources/HW, and there's a link to it. I think it's called single-board computers. Anyway, it's listed as fatally flawed because of the fact that it can't run at all without a non-free program. There are other options which are considerably better because they're only seriously flawed. There's some hardware that won't work without a non-free program, but at least they can run without any non-free software. So take a look at that list and inform other people. If you see somebody mentioning the Raspberry Pi, you see someone's going to give a talk about the Raspberry Pi, well, tell people about this problem and this page. Go to the talk and mention it. This is what we need to do. We need to raise awareness of the ways in which common computing practices harm users' freedom. You know, people ask me to talk with them using Skype. Sometimes if I see a Skype address listed in somebody's signature, I say, you know, listing a Skype address is inviting people to use proprietary software. You shouldn't do that. Using proprietary software is bad for you. encouraging other people to use proprietary software is doing harm to them. So at least don't ever suggest that someone else do it. Don't list a Skype address. And by the way, Google Hangouts are just as bad. So we need to become aware of the common computing practices that promote and impose non-free software so that we can refuse to participate in them and avoid spreading them. Wired magazine this morning published an article I've written which explains the basic ideas of free software, the ideas of the free software movement, why we must demand free software. It's the first article I've written about this since the 1990s. And it expresses the better ways that I've found to state this point. With software, either the users control the program or the program controls the users. Free software is when the users control the program. Proprietary software is when the program controls the users and the owner controls the program, so that program is an instrument giving the owner power over the users. So take a look at the article and spread the word. I've also written an article about what we need to do to regain privacy. What level of surveillance is too much? How much surveillance can a free country tolerate? And that hasn't been published yet, but I intend to have it published soon. I wanted it to get published before today, but things got delayed. So, now it's time for the auction. So I have two things to auction. I have this cup with a cover. With a glue on it. And they're for sale here, more of them. But this one I will sign. And we have this adorable canoe that needs a home. And if you have a penguin at home, you need to get a GNU for your penguin. Because as we all know, a penguin can't hardly function without it. And this also I will sign if you buy it. When you're bidding, please wave your arm and shout the amount. By the way, what's the regular price of this? This is 25. Okay, they're both are regular price 25, so that's what I'll start at. And we can accept payment by check, credit card, or cash. So first, the cup. Do I get 25? How much? But I don't know how much well, we can accept the equivalent. Okay, we can accept it in bitcoins, but the bidding is in dollars. So, bidding at how much? I've got 25. Do I get 30?
100.
I've got 100. Do I get 110? I've got 100. Do I get 110? 110 for this adorable 110 to the Free Software Foundation to defend freedom. I got 110. Do I get 120? I've got 110. Do I get 120 for this adorable couple? I got 120. Now, actually, this is not the first time in my auctions that somebody has outbid himself. I got 120. Do I get 130? Do I get 130 for this adorable cup? Okay, 130. Do I get 140 for this the Free Software Foundation to defend freedom. Last chance to bid 140 or more. Going, how much? 150. I've got 150. Do I get 160 for this adorable cup that needs a home? 175. I've got 175. Do I get 185 for this adorable cup? I've got 200. I've got 200. Do I get 220 for this adorable cup? I've got 220. Do I get 240? Do I get 240? 240 for this adorable cup. 240 to the Free Software Foundation to defend freedom. Do I get 240? Last chance.
240.
Last chance. How much?
240.
I've got 240. Do I get 260? I've got 240. Do I get 260? 260 for this adorable. I've got 260. Do I get 280? 280. Do I get 280 for this adorable cup? Do I get 280 for the Free Software Foundation to defend freedom? Do I get 280? Last chance. Last chance to bid 280 or more. Going. Going. Gone for 260. Yes, we do. Work with John will arrange to take your money. So now it's time to auction the adorable GNU that needs a home. And I'm going to start with 25. But I've got 25. Do I get 30? 30. How much? 50. I've got 50. Do I get 60? 60. Who said 60? I've got 60. Do I get 70 or more? How much? I've got 70. Do I get 80 or more? Do I get 80 or more? I've got 70. How much? 80. I've got 80. Do I get 90? I've got 80. Do I get 90? How much?
90.
Did someone say 100?
100.
I've got 100. Do I get 110? I've got 100. Do I get 110? Do I get 110 for this adorable GNU? This GNU will feel humiliated if you come back. I've got 100. Do I get 110?
110.
I've got 110. Do I get 120? I've got 110. Do I get 120 for this adorable GNU that needs a home? Do I get 120 to the Free Software Foundation to defend how much?
120.
I've got 120. Do I get 130? I've got 120. Do I get 130 for this adorable GNU? 130 to the Free Software Foundation to defend freedom. Last chance. It's over. I can't believe. What? No, I didn't. 130. Damn, so, did 130? I've got 130 for this adorable GNU. I've got 130. Do I get 140?
It's better than the cup. Come on, guys.
Well, you can't drink out of it. I got one. How much? I've got 150. Do I get 160? I've got 150. Do I get 160 for this adorable GNU? 160 to the Free Software Foundation to defend freedom.
160.
Who said? Okay, 160. I've got 160. Do I get 170? I've got 160. Do I get 170? 170 for this adorable GNU. 170 to defend freedom. Last chance. Last chance to bid 170 or more. Going. Going. I've got 200. Do I get 220? 220 for this adorable GNU? 220 to defend freedom? Do I get 220 or more? Last chance to bid 220 or more. Last chance. Going. The GNU is catching up on the club. Oh no. Now someone should pay to destroy it. I've got 220. Do I get 240? I've got 220. Do I get 240 for this adorable GNU? 240 to defend freedom. Last chance to bid 240 or more. Last chance. Going. Going. Gone for 220. So